Welcome to the committee review meeting, March 6, 2018, the Norwood Board of Education. Amber Ballard is missing. All other board members are present. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with discussion items, and Dr. Sabo, I'll let you take over.
Okay, so very first on our list is school safety, and I'd just like to let you know that a few weeks ago I met with the mayor in a separate meeting, and then additional to that I met with Chief Kramer and Captain Bellman and Officer Vickers. And we will continually with them review our safety plan as well. We'll do the same with our faculty. We are planning a tabletop exercise in April and May, including our Norwood PD. I want to let you know that we have 4 full-time mental health therapists in the district, and we work with Tower House with those folks. Those folks work directly for Tower House, but they work for us and work with our students. Additionally, we have full-time counselors in each building. And if parents choose not to work with the Tower House therapist that we have available, we also have an intern that they could be appointed. We have a full-time social worker that is working in the district to remove barriers to learning for students. And this month, actually well before the Florida tragedy, we had planned to review and just learn more about what ALICE training is and how we could perhaps use it. And so our building principals will learn at their administrative meeting with the help of our school resource officer, Hasley. He has reached out for an ALICE expert to share with us more about what ALICE training means and if it would be appropriate for us. So we will do that in just a few weeks. I want you to know that due to the tragedy in Florida, a nationwide student walkout is planned with high school students. They came to the administration there and wanted to plan an event, and so we have arranged an event on March the 14th in the gym to honor the 17 lives of the students and adults lost in Florida, and of course to have a discussion about school safety. We're encouraging students not to walk out because, as you can imagine, it's much easier for us to manage and ensure their safety inside our school building. However, we recognize that potential is there, and we're preparing for that. As you can imagine, as high school students, they're close to the middle school students, and middle school students have also heard about such an opportunity. And so our middle school administration is working on planning something appropriate in the auditorium for our middle school students. We're working hard because of safety not to announce the times of this kind of opportunity for our students, but we know that our students want to honor those folks in Florida that were certainly so tragically impacted by the actions. I want you to know that we do have a school safety line, and it is not new. It is something that's been in place for a number of years. You can call anonymously to report not only threats, but such items as suicide, bullying, potential fights, and that number is 844-SAFER-OHIO, SAFEROH. And I want you to know, too, that we are investigating online opportunities to monitor using various algorithms, statements that could be made online, and that would afford us the opportunity to have some advance notice, should that be helpful to us. It was something that was proposed at a safety conference that I went to a few weeks ago. I also want to let you know that there are other potential walkouts besides the March 14th that are planned across the nation. Another would be in April the 20th. It would be the 19th anniversary of Columbine. And so that one is taking a little bit of a different preface, but we'll work to do our very best to ensure safety, to provide a high-class education for our students, and to move about our day in a very healthy way. Any questions about school safety?
No, I want to make sure that we reiterate the fact that we can put all precautions out there and in place. But unless we do the simple things like making sure our doors are shut, which is how the Florida incident happened, was we came through an unlocked door, it's not going to help.
Right.
So we need to recognize the fact that, stress to our staff and our students, that you just don't prop the doors open.
That's right.
You also just don't let someone in the back door because they're walking by and knocking on the window. That's something that a lot of us forget and we don't think about. So we just want to make sure we're on that, because it's an easy way in around all of the things that we've tried to protect against. So
Important things to know, for sure. Keeping the door shut and locked, and then talking to one
who's
another.
coming in our building.
That's right.
On the days they got these walkouts, we're going to have the police up there, correct?
So when I
And the
spoke to the
safety.
police, this event, the walkout was already in the works, and they did agree that they would be helpful to us. The intention is that there's a show of support. We want our students to know that they are close, less than a block away,
Yeah,
and that they will help to protect us.
yeah.
And I want for our students to know who they are. We all know Officer Hasley, but I want them to know who Chief Kramer is. What does he look like? You can walk up and have a great conversation.
I'm just thinking if they're putting all these dates out, they're just, setting the precedents for
Yeah,
anything
the
that could happen.
concept of walking out or protesting or participating in such an exercise is something that I look for more to happen.
I have two questions. The first one, you had mentioned that there's a tabletop exercise set up for May. Can you expound on that just a little bit more?
So a tabletop exercise is simply where you have generally the leaders of your district around the building or around the table, along with local law enforcement, and an experience is posed to you, and you would need to respond as to how you would do that. And of course, you have your policy in hand,
Right.
but the idea is that you talk through such an exercise and that you know your documents well enough that you can think through it quickly.
Okay.
And then, of course, we evaluate, do the documents support our thinking? How are we communicating to each other? And it's just a simple exercise.
Right.
It's one of many ways to make us better.
Is that being done in conjunction with first responders? Or is that
Not
just?
yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. And then my second question relates, because you had mentioned something about Alice Street. So there has been a lot of chatter, at least in the community, about Alice Train here in our school district. And I know that's one direction to go. Have you heard or have any experience with the Department of Homeland Security's recommended program, Run, Hide, Fight?
I've heard of it. And actually, from what I understand, it is somewhat like Alice. So we just speak about, for example, different terms, but the same kind of action. So sometimes we think, in order for a teacher to respond appropriately, we want them to not think about too many things, because it's difficult in an emergency
Right.
to decide, which is how they came up with the run and the hide.
Right.
And in our training, we talked about, should I stay or should I go?
Right.
So there are different ways to frame that. However, we're really approaching it, Alice is if someone, or run and hide is if someone is already in the building.
Right.
We really like to approach the whole concept of safety with what can we do preventative. And so far the district has done a number of things, but I think there's more that we can do.
Yeah, one of my concerns with Alice training, and I don't know if this was mentioned by anybody else, but I read a recent National Institute of Health report that had said now that Alice has had a couple of years under its belt, that for some of the younger grades where the students don't necessarily understand,
Right.
it could have an effect of almost like post-traumatic stress
Yes.
just through the drill process.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that concerns me.
I think And when I spoke with the officers, Norwood police officers, and even Officer Housley, when we all met together, we talked about elements of Alice being appropriate and some not being appropriate. And I think we have to look at the age level too. We want to protect the innocence of our children. And I think the adults have that charge. That is our role and that's our obligation. And so I certainly know that we will work to that end.
So I definitely think that whatever direction we decide to go in, it would behoove us to be on the same page as the first responders. So everybody knows how we're responding and knows how to respond to it.
And that's
To
why
our
we've
response.
included Norwood Police Department as part of this, because while Alice is the word that a lot of people like to use,
Right.
not everyone and not all school districts are believers and users of that methodology. So that's why we'll start with just tell us about what it is
Yeah.
in great detail, help us to understand. And hopefully after that and a little bit more research, we can find something that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next topic is our property appraisal update, and we have with us the wise Gary Stradonsky.
Thank you. So it's been a while since I've been in here, this room, years ago. But thanks for having me, Ernie, and asking me to come and just present to the board on what we're doing. I'm the school district's attorney with Ennis Britton. You guys probably know Bill Dieters. I think he works with you a lot. But I do a lot of the board revision work for our clients, which is property value fights. So as you know, Brookwood Commons and Pavilion sold for $112 million. It was on the books for $70 million, and we filed the increased value of the sale price.
Gary, by the way, was the one who negotiated that settlement for us, and that check that you approved to be deposited, which wasn't hard for you to approve. But Gary's worked with the district for a very long time as well, even though a little bit more behind the scenes than Bill Dieters, but has done a lot of work for us.
Yep. And so, that's what we do, and we normally look and, property owners, you guys have a lot of commercial property in the district, and they'll file for to decrease their values, which will result, if granted, in a direct hit in revenue to the district. So we contest those where appropriate. If the property's sold and it's less than the auditor's value, it's not much of a fight. They're going to probably win. Just like if the property sells and the value's higher than the auditor's value, we're going to win. So I know Ernie's done a lot of work, and I've tried to help him too, looking at other properties that are big players in the district in the commercial space that have not necessarily sold, but the value has been changed by the auditor as part of the reappraisal process. So that just happened going from 2016 to the 2017 tax year. So we took a look at these and were perplexed by some of them, values going down. If you look at University Station Apartments, the values there dropped by about 13%. Brookwood Exchange Tower, the office building, drops by 10%. That retail over there where Jimmy John's is, and Season 52, drops by 11%. Ireland and Point, down 17%. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, when we look at some of these drops, because overall in the district, the commercial sales we've had, like Brookwood, and there was the original Brookwood office tower that's over there, the one where my doctor is, that one sold for an enormous amount of money, $160 a square foot. So when you look at that information, you see the auditor reducing the values of some of these other properties, we start to question it. I think that's what Ernie has done. So we looked at those properties and contacted two appraisers, because if you did want to go after and try to challenge those values without a sale, we would need some evidence, and that evidence is in the form of an appraisal. So looked at two appraisers, kind of settled on one who gave us quotes for the work, and he'll give a preliminary value estimate for about half of the appraisal cost to look at these properties. And so Courtyard, new Courtyard's another one that he thinks might be undervalued. And the Brookwood Apartments over there as well, the new, it's selling 71. So those are properties that may be undervalued. The appraiser makes no promises to the district. He just is very preliminary looked at it and said, that Courtyard by Marriott, is on the books for $111,000 per room. He's confident that it costs them more to build that on a per room basis. You look at hotels on a per room basis. So I think it seems if the district is willing and able, there's some opportunity to make some revenue here, because the auditor did do his reappraisal, but they don't do a full appraisal like we could go get and present to the board revision to try to increase the value to what the fair market value would be. They do much more general appraisal. So I don't know what else you'd like me to
Well,
add.
we have talked about this in the past, but this is the first time that it's really multiple pieces of property here. There's 5 parcels and there's 8 different operating entities within those 5 parcels. And the challenge that we have here is that, first of all, it's going to cost some money. The preliminary work will be about 16.8, but I believe we would probably like to add one more property on that, and that's an office building that we at first thought, well, maybe it is justified, but then when you compare it to what Gary said on the office building that sold, it's not justified. And so I think what's happened here is that with the 2017 reappraisal, we actually saw, if it had not been for the sale of the mall, there would have been essentially no increase in Class 2 value. And I think you probably should be perplexed by that. Because when you see all the commercial activity going on, that doesn't seem to make sense. And so my purpose for tonight was, one, this is a lot of parcels for us to be doing all at once, possibly one more than we have on the list if we add the one back that you and I talked about last week. The process here is that, with Gary's expertise, he helps a lot in terms of, I could be more emotional than he'll be in terms of, but it's clear that's busy and should be, but you have to put this in perspective sometimes. So he will help us through that process. The appraiser, you can't just walk into these meetings and say, we think it should be more when it just went through a reappraisal. And so I'm recommending to you that we go forward. There's the potential for you to hear from people who are upset that we're challenging values and spending money to challenge values, but it's actually for the greater good of the taxpayer as a whole. Because if values are undervalued on the business property, then that burden clearly shifts to residential property owners. And by the way, we do not, appeal residential properties. We will apartment buildings, those kind of things, but that's as close as we get to that. So we need a little bit of feedback. This is more than in the past where I've come to you. I think we've had a couple of these in the past few years, and I've said, look, there's this one. I think we need to do it. And sometimes they'll end there. The odds are, Gary, I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, but the odds are with this many that we're going to possibly get some good information that says that it's undervalued, and it could go all the way to Board of Tax Appeals. And I think you just need to at least prepare them for that process that's a little bit different than just going to Hamilton County with a full appraisal. So it's 2 steps. One's a preliminary that will give us some feedback. And Gary has a relationship with the appraisal company that they'll start saying, this is why we think you should do it, not just let's go do an appraisal. And then the next step is going to refine that and talk about, there's some really good evidence that we ought to go ahead and do a full appraisal and a full report for you to be able to use. But then it can go to a higher level here.
Yeah, so the way it's got to work, at this lower level, where we're in the county board revision, downtown, there's no opportunity for discovery. So that means I can't demand that the property owners turn over their rental. I can't say, give me every lease you have in that apartment complex, because we want to know what people are paying in rents. We want to know what your expenses are, which then that'll translate to a net operating income, which you then apply a rate of return and you can get a value on the property. So we can't really force them to give that information to us at this level. Absent any settlement where they say, hey, we don't want you to do this and we're willing to pay you if you drop this, what would happen is we would file our complaint. The deadline to do that is the 31st of this month. It gets set for a hearing later in the year. We go into hearing with a little bit of information. This would probably be during the summer. We're not going to have the full appraisal because the appraiser can't complete it without all that information that they would normally obtain. So we may, and probably would, lose at the Board of Revision level and then appeal to the Ohio Board of Tax Appeals where there is that opportunity for discovery, like in civil litigation. You send requests for production of documents and interrogatories to them, and they must produce it. And then the appraiser can also get into the property and inspect it, because although these are some commercial spaces and you and I can walk in there, and you certainly could too, they're going to question when someone's taking pictures, right? So we really need their permission to let them in, let them into the back areas as well that we couldn't access. So that's in general the process, and I would suspect on many of these, if we did this and filed, these are big corporations who have attorneys who fight this stuff for them. They're going to probably reach out and contact me and say, what's going on? We're going to say, we think this property is undervalued, shouldn't have dropped this much. Here's a comparable that sold for $160 per square foot when you're at $100. It doesn't make sense to us, and we're going to go after it. They may offer at that point to try to settle the case. Like with Brookwood, there was a payment issue to the district in order to settle that case and be done with it. So I think that's probably what would happen in a lot of them. Some of them, they may just say, you know what, we're going to fight it. We don't care, we think it's too high as it is. We're going to ask for a lower value and fight. So that's how it would play out in very general terms, and it can go any number of ways. And Ernie, I think, mentioned a political aspect of it too. You guys may get complaints. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you fighting my values? But again, it's not like it's a mom and pop business. These are all big corporations that own these buildings and big landlords that own them, and they fight values all the time to decrease their value so they pay fewer taxes. And I do think Ernie is right. He knows it better than I do, but as commercial values increase, the tax rate overall will adjust and the burden goes a little bit further away from your residents. But these properties are subject to TIFs too, so
Yes.
some of it, not all.
So the revenue generation that we've negotiated is dependent upon certain value levels. And if those values don't perform, then our TIF payments don't perform. And if TIF payments don't perform, then we have to ask for voters for support, which we don't have any additional need in this forecast period, and we want to keep it that way. And so to me, it's a good business decision. The thing that just was so different about this one was after the reappraisal, we knew we had the Rookwood sale, and almost all of it got offset by decreases elsewhere. And, that just was kind of tough to process the last couple of months. And I talked to Gary, contacted him, and it was hard to look at it and say, look, we need to come to you and say that I need to recommend to you. Gary can't recommend to you. He would certainly tell us if we thought there was no reason to do this. But, I believe we need to protect our tax base. We have two assets beyond kids and parents and our staff and all of those. But the financial assets truly are property values and tax rates. And we have to keep our eye on both. And the property values are something that we need to be looking at. And so the preliminary on this work, if we add the additional property, the preliminary appraisals work could be somewhere in the range of $25,000. We would make, well, if we add the other back, if we add the one back. 18, okay. So if we do that, we certainly wouldn't just automatically do a full appraisal on all of them. We'll reassess that, get information. And by the way, I sent you the packet that I prepared and sent to Scott as chairman of the Finance Committee so that you could all see that. I will look into, I'm not sure that I included the one property that we think we need to add. But we'll look at that again. Then the next step will be to say, no, we don't need a full on this, or we do. But we need to file by March 31st. And unless I hear differently from you, this doesn't necessarily require board approval, but it certainly requires board being informed. And I've informed you of those in the past, but it's been one at a time. So I guess it's opportunity for you to give us some feedback at this point in time as well on this as we move forward. So what are your thoughts?
I think we should go for it.
Okay.
One question that might be difficult to answer at this point in time, but what would be our anticipated or estimated return of investment. So if we're going to invest into this preliminary report and going down this path, it's going to cost us money. What is potentially our return on this?
It is tough because we don't know the values, but I think it would be several $100,000 a year. And so this is the first, we considered this last year, but that was the last year of a triennial, which means we would have had it done in last year and also bring the cases back this year. So by waiting for just 1 year, we were able to see what the auditor did with the values and see if we agreed with it or not. But also, it allows us to do this one time, and it's going to apply for the 3 years in this triennial. So if you were able to generate $200,000 a year as a result of these efforts, that's really $600,000 over the triennial.
Right.
And I don't think a couple $100,000 is out of the question per year. Based the Rookwood payment was about $1 million, I think.
Well, to give you an example, the other Rookwood, the TIF, if it's at its current level, the TIF payment could be $300,000 short. So when you look at this from a multi-year versus a one-time payment, that's also a factor in this that unless none of these worked out, you could not end up with an additional dollar and you spent $16,000 or $18,000 to find out if we ought to test the waters or not. I think it's pretty unlikely. And any of the properties that we're talking about, I mean, the smaller retail sections, perhaps not, but from the hotel on up, if just one of those data shows to be undervalued, and this is data driven at the end of the day, if it's undervalued, then you will get your payback, whether 2 years or 3, but no more than that. You'll get it back.
Well,
Yeah,
and the fact that, University Station, they're 13, 10, and 11%, that's a lot. I mean, it's not like they're 2 or 3%.
I was just scratching my head. Gary helped me get
Even
some.
if we bump them to, half of
Yeah,
that, we're still
that's a good point
in the
to
money.
follow Brandon's question is we're dealing with right now potential reductions
Right.
on our TIF payments.
Right.
And that's just what led me to I was just scratching my head and Gary helped me to get some very detailed data from the county and put it in a spreadsheet. We looked at it for year-over-year change and it just didn't make sense.
So if we did nothing, so
We're down.
We're going to see a reduction.
We will.
Yeah. So if we went forward, we're going to spend $16,000, $18,000 initially.
Mhm.
More if we have to fight it through the second level, right? But
Absolutely.
could see a much bigger return. I'm in favor of it, actually.
I just looked. If you took all these properties and you were to increase them in value by $10 million, it's about $175,000 a year to the district. And I don't think that's out of the question. I think it could be more. That's each year.
So Gary, you need to file from us, and would the preliminary information help you as part of that filing, or what would be your sequence of events here?
I don't think I need the preliminary values from the appraiser to file. I certainly don't. We've done it without it before, not nor with other schools. So I don't need it. I just needed to know before the hearing. We go to a hearing, which won't be until June or July or August maybe, what the preliminary values are. Because at that point, if he says, look, these are values, these great value the auditor's got on there, if I go forward, you're not going to like what I give you, then we want to pull that back and withdraw it. So I just need that, by the summer. So we can file on all of these. We can always withdraw them later before the hearing if it looks like the value's good or too high.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll keep you informed along the way. As you can tell, though, it's not an overnight process in that. And we'd like to proceed, and I'll follow up with you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Stelzer.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next on our list, I wanted to update you on the bidding process for a general contractor at the middle school. And actually, through SHP, our architect, contractors let them know that they really needed a few more days to gather their bids together. So we moved that date to Thursday. However, I did want to share with you a few quick video clips of what SHP has put together and for what, once we find a general contractor, what perhaps things could look like at the middle school. So if I take you to the main entrance, this takes you up the main entrance, and I'm going to show you the elevator here. Of course, you're walking through our first set of doors, through our second set of safety doors to the right, and right here to your left, that blue door is going to be our new elevator. Right now, that's about 3 or 4 windows. So let me play that for you again, just so you can process that.
Okay,
And our
so
lovely new
how
steps.
do they get to the elevator if they can't get up the steps?
So that's my next video I'm going to show you. Once you make it up all these steps, you need the elevator to go to the 3rd floor. So this is the elevator, and this just shows you what that main hallway looks like. So this is if you were to get to the elevator through the, coming in from the, let me stop it there.
On the floor.
From the bottom floor. So this is what we call the girls' entrance from back in the early 1900s. So you walk through, and presently at the end of this hallway, you would have a choice. You still have the choice to go upstairs to the 1st floor. And right now, you would see wooden doors, and that would take you into the mechanical components of what we call the basement. So these lockers are wrong. They're actually going to be single lockers. So that's your opportunity to go up the steps to your right to the 1st floor. You can go down these steps, and that takes you to the girls' gym. So this set of wooden doors would be changed. This would be certainly a walk-through area. Down a little bit of an decline, and then there's our new elevator. Decline, mechanicals on both sides to get to those areas. And then this is the other side of the building where we have the boys' entrance. And if you turn to the right here, you would walk down to the boys' gym, where you could go up the steps, and that would take you directly to the office. And this, if you walk through the door straight ahead, that takes you to the outside, which is the right between the bridge. Yeah, that area. So, geez, let me see that again. Sorry, I like to envision what it will look like. Again, these lockers are going to be single lockers. They're not over top of one another. We've corrected that. Again, wooden doors removed. The elevator access is directly to the right. Of course, there's a bit of a decline there. Access to mechanicals on both right sides, right and left. Up an incline, and then of course that will take you to the access on the other side of the building.
Is that elevator, so you go down to the boys' gym, the old boys' gym, or the girls' gym. So does the elevator go down another floor as well?
It does not.
It does not.
It does not.
So,
It doesn't get you access to the field house.
okay.
It does not. There were some limitations.
So they'll have to go outside across the parking lot to get to the field house.
Or they could, right where we talked about that corridor walking all the way through, they could then walk all the way through from the girls' entrance, past the elevator, walk all the way through, and then we call it the bullpen
Yeah.
affectionately. They could,
Walk
just
through that
shorter
way.
access there. So this is the classroom view. Essentially, it looks like a typical classroom, but this is going to take you into a classroom, and I'll try to point out some of the new things. You won't feel the air condition, but pretend that there's air conditioning as you walk through this lovely door. You see speakers up ahead. You'll see, of course, new lighting. You see that air conditioning hanging from the building, and you see nice new drop ceilings. And of course, we don't have one to take you into a bathroom where there would be new plumbing. But you see a cohesive ceiling there. And of course, you didn't see the new technology, but there'll be technology there. And you'll just see more outlets. And you don't see those outlets.
Do we have, going back to security on the doors downstairs, how will that work?
So what we've investigated is, we have the swipe access if you have a car, but when it comes to teachers being able to lock down their classroom, we'll be investigating a new cylinder system so that they can actually lock the door far more easily. Right now, because of the temperature, you kind of have to wiggle and jiggle the either the wood expands or the metal is either too warm or too cold or over 100 years old. So we're going to change those cylinders so that they can easily lock from the inside the classroom door. But it is not right now in the budget for all new doors. We're looking forward to the construction process. And hopefully we'll have more for you on those bid updates
Yes.
this week. The next thing on our list is policy adoption. I know we talked at length about how to go about policy, and we've included in your packet is a suggestion from Mr. Dieters, simply about how to go about adopting policy based on the policy we have now about adopting policy. So unless you want to change our present policy, right now our policy suggests that we would read the first time during the formal board meeting, not during the committee, and that the second reading after that we could then adopt. So he suggested just 2 months. So perhaps, for example, if we use this month as an example, at our board meeting next week would be the first reading. Next month would be a second reading, and in that same meeting we could adopt. He did not note it in his letter, but many times in our conversation, he suggested that we should not temporarily adopt unless absolutely necessary. He encouraged us not to do that. So if you want to change policy, we can have that discussion, but I just wanted to bring clarity to what our policy says and how it should be applied or could be applied moving forward.
And once again, by state law, we don't have to have 2 readings because of our being district.
That's right. But our policy, the way we adopted it, suggests
Our district policy.
that's right.
So I think we should change our district policy. I mean, I've been on board 10 years, you've been on it 12, and I'm not sure that we've ever had anybody that has come back to us and didn't like a policy adoption.
And if we did at that point, we could address it. You know, it's not like, I don't know why we would want to hold up the policies.
Well, and I think it adds more paperwork and more chance for us to lose something or drop something or not get it taken care of like we should.
So quarterly policies are proposed to us, which suggests 4 times a year. So I was grateful that he wasn't suggesting a 3rd month because then it could get confusing.
I disagree. I think that having the 2 readings is good, it's healthy. It allows for the possibility of other stakeholders who may have some input into the policy decisions that we make to want to do. Now, you had made the comment that you've been on the board for so many years, and Scott and Tim have been on the board for so many years, and that hasn't happened. It doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. It just means it hasn't happened in the past. If the other comment about it creating more paperwork or the opportunity to drop or lose things, I disagree with as well. I mean, we already do our agenda by consent decree, which means that you don't have to sit there and read verbatim every policy change. The way that we do it is we adopt it by listing the line items 1 through 10 or A through F or whatever, and then technically that's considered an official reading. You do that 1 month and then you do it again the second month, and there it goes. We already have the proposed policy changes on our website for people to view. I know the current proposed policy changes have been on our website for almost a month now, right?
Maybe we'll
Oh, yeah. So I don't think we should change our policy. I would be in disagreement for wanting to change our current policy for the 2 readings. It's my opinion. I would defer to the general consensus of the board, but I wouldn't change that. I would allow that to go forward and allow for our constituents to be able to have a voice on our policy matters if they choose to do so.
Well, I mean, they have a voice on our policy matters, whether we adopt them at the same month that we read them or whether we hold them off. It's a matter of, if we adopt it the same month, then at least the policy's in place. And if they've got an issue with it, they come to us, we talk to about it, and then we can address it again at our next meeting. Sometimes we're under time constraints when the policy's handed down. I don't know that it's a matter of that month it has to be adopted. I believe we have had them where we've had them presented and we have to adopt them because of a time constraint. If we don't change our policy, then we're tying our hands on that. And we're going to then be forced to have a special meeting just to have a second reading on these. And I understand what you're saying. I get it. But it's not that we're not going to listen. I mean, someone comes, I've been on this board a long time, like Jerry said, and no one's ever come to me and said, I got a question for you on this policy, and how can we change it? And it's not like I'm hiding. I'm out in the public as much as anybody. Most people don't, unless it affects their child, they're not looking at the policies. And if it affects their child, they're not looking at the policies. They're coming to you and saying, what can you do to help me? It's not, I read through the policies and this is the policy that needs to be changed.
Right. I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that in itself is a reason to change our current policy structure for having 2 readings. I don't buy that argument. So,
Well, I mean, I think the fact that, number one, it's not a requirement. I'm not sure why we make one, because it's not a requirement board-wide. Other boards don't do it that way. Other school boards do not do it that way unless they have a different policy than we do. And I'd like to not separate ourselves to that extent that, plus I know administratively, I do know that it's an added step. So, I mean, I want to be transparent, and I want to, I'm with both of you on the fact that, if somebody has a problem, I certainly want it addressed by the board, but they are certainly going to come to our meetings, or they're certainly going to call one of us if they have a problem. And then we always address, since I've been here, we've always addressed those issues. So I think we should revert it back to...
You're not reverting it.
Well, change it back, or change it to agree with the state policy that we don't have to have 2 readings.
I think part of the complicating factor here is that the board itself has interpreted its own policy a different way than it's being interpreted by external people. And you either clarify that now or you don't. But you use that external input to tell you how to either do it the way it is written now or what you change it to. I think it's healthy to have the discussion about policy. I think it's already healthy that we're posting it to the webpage now and putting that out in advance. You might want to consider revisiting the policy just to make sure that even some of those things are clearly delineated as to how this board wishes its information to be distributed and to be put out there for people to see. There's only opportunity to improve it. What's at stake here right now, or not really at stake, is for a very long time, long before me, this board has interpreted its own policy into a certain procedure. And what you're hearing now is that procedure either needs to change or the policy needs to change. So you have to debate that and come out with what you want. But keep in mind, debating it, whether you change it or not, already you have policy posted to the webpage now. Those are only good things to have happen.
I agree.
So.
I mean, could we just put the policies out ahead of time and then?
They are.
Yeah, and then do the first reading at the committee and then do the second one at the board meeting? Is that
We
still
would
give
need
enough
to change
time?
our policy to suggest that a committee would be considered a meeting.
Okay.
A notification.
What's implied now is that because a participant cannot speak to the board at a committee meeting
Right.
unless invited to, that's not really considered participation. But participation can be viewed as an email, a phone call, a verbal phone conversation, or a verbal conversation regarding the policy.
So then technically it needs to be done at
A board meeting.
board meeting first, and then
Where
second one is
participation is
voted on?
permitted.
We have
The
to take
second
an,
board
we have to
meeting.
take an official action on it. And official actions only happen
At board
at
meetings.
board meetings.
At board meeting. But we could read it 1 month at the board meeting and then just wait till the following month to vote on it.
And it would have a second reading and then we would adopt.
So
Yeah. That same meeting, yeah.
instead of doing it all at the same night.
So your interpretation of that would be that you would have the first reading a month before, and then the following month you would have both the reading and the adoption?
That's
Correct.
correct.
And that would fit, is that what our legal counsel is saying would
Yes.
fit with current policy?
That's correct, with how it's written now.
But the state policy is written that you do not have to have two readings.
I would be careful with that, because OSBA does recommend that boards have multiple readings for policy changes. We don't have to agree with the OSBA.
There are a lot of things
And we don't agree with
those.
it. Yes. We almost didn't pay our dues one year because we
Yeah.
were on it.
Yeah, we got pulled out of OSBA. It was your first year, isn't it?
Yeah. Which will come up in our other session.
The one thing that if you did it the way, if you used your existing policy and interpret it to be a meeting instead of committee, which has not been how it's been interpreted in the past.
Right.
For a very long time, I'm going to mention that again. One thing that does do for us as an administrative team is it establishes a set protocol that we know then that it needs to be posted to the webpage by that meeting, and therefore it is at least posted for 30 days headed into the next meeting. I think it's manageable. I just think we need to know, what you prefer. I like knowing that there's something that triggers us to get that on the webpage. And the one thing that does that, arguably, although it doesn't work today, according to what we're being told, is the committee meeting. But a board meeting will do that, and then the following meeting has been out there for 30 days. For your benefit and for the public's. I think as we head into board docs and we're trying to use the webpage more as an archive, where you folks don't have to carry paper in here and look at a phone to read something. I think it's just going to grow in terms of our efficiency with that. So that's my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. Probably manageable. I like the idea of something triggering us to get that on the webpage and have it out there. That's just me. And we haven't discussed that. So.
Chris, how often do we have it where the policy's presented and we have to get it done before 2 months?
Not very often. Usually those are triggered by something internally that we are trying to fix that is important to us. Like when we changed, athletic grade point averages and things like that felt more timely for us. Those were really important and timely. We don't always when we get the quarterly report, we don't always immediately bring it here. We do some behind the scenes work. We're like, oh, check this policy out. This just came down. How will this show itself at the high school? A lot of it affects the high school. How will this work with athletics? How will this work with our graduating class? So we run it by to make sure that we can handle the changes to come. And then we try to, of course, get it in within that time. Sometimes they have a date. It's usually about assessment that has a date, and those come when they come. They're kind of, you can't predict those. So,
Okay.
but I know this is a big group of policies, but we often do try to separate them out unless they're really easy and they're low-hanging fruit. So it's like, oh, that goes with this, and it's a duplicate. So really 4 is really just one policy reiterated in multiple forms. But they often aren't all at once.
And the difference here is essentially 2 or 2.5 weeks. Because we normally would have it to you at committee. What we're talking about is that the board meeting before that would be there no later than the board meeting before.
Actually, you'd be talking about the committee meeting before that board
You
meeting.
would, but you wouldn't have to. At the same time, we could still have the agenda ready and have those to
Because you
you at
wouldn't
board
adopt
meeting.
it at that point.
Yeah, I know, but do you want to actually take action on something that you haven't read?
Well, no, you
whether you're
wouldn't take
adopting it or
action.
not.
You wouldn't
It's a
take action
reading.
until the
It's
next
an official
meeting.
reading.
Right.
I know,
Do you
it
want
is.
to have that
You're right.
official reading?
And you
And,
don't get to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Usually directly into it. I understand.
I mean, I don't know that I want it if I haven't read it, if
Yeah.
I haven't seen
No,
it.
you lost me there.
I mean, if it's an official reading and all of a sudden we're going to have an opportunity for the public to ask questions.
I see what you're saying.
If I've had no opportunity to read it or go over
So
it,
go through two
point.
committees
Yeah.
and one board meeting, then the final board meeting. So 2 and 2 is what he's
Yeah.
saying. 2. So, yeah,
Which
the board can
extends it
ask
out even
clarifying.
more.
yeah,
It's 2 months
takes it
instead,
out a month.
or 4 weeks instead of 2.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for complicating it.
Essentially what we've done this past time.
Yes.
Right, what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it doesn't make a difference to me. I'm fine either way. It's a minor change to me. I just don't want to make it harder than what it has to be. Past practices have worked. So I haven't had an issue with that. So, and Brandon, I'm not trying to say I've been on the board all this time. I'm just saying in the past it's worked. It hasn't been an issue for us. But if you feel strongly about it, I'm fine with it. I don't care. It's a minor change for me.
Well, I mean, I'm the same way. I just think that it's always, I'm with the thing of keep it simple. And this seems to complicate it based on not a whole lot of opposition.
Will you be okay? Because this might happen where one round of policies is going through, but we've got to start another one if they don't all start at once.
See, that's what
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like sometimes we keep a few on hold because
Right.
like we better find this out. So we start the first 5. If say we have 10, we start the first 5 and they're starting the process and the next month we'll introduce the next 5. Also, we do it sometimes to honor your time at committee so that we're not reviewing. And sometimes we're in a low period where there isn't much action. But so you have to just be comfortable with that cycle of first round, second round, and then we'd be okay.
I don't see how that would be a big deal because as you introduce the first round, right, and we hash out those policy changes at that first committee meeting, and then we have that first reading. So the following committee reading, you can introduce the second round. We don't have to rehash
Right.
the first round because we've already done that, we've already read, unless somebody has come to us and said that they have an issue with it. That would be the only time that we would have to rehash anything that had a first reading. And, since there has been very little participation from our constituents regarding policy change, I don't see that that's going to be that big of a deal. You never know what can happen, in the future, but I think having that transparency and having that opportunity to engage the public is nothing but a good thing and very manageable.
Christina, how many times from your experience going from a 2-week turnaround, essentially, which is what we're sort of talking about now, we've interpreted to be able to introduce policy at committee, approve it 2 weeks later or 10 days later. How many times have you encountered challenges that you can recall, to put you on the spot, where having a 6-week turnaround, which is what I think you're talking about now, if it was at the committee before, then 2 board meetings, how many times would that have caused stress on the system or not having something timely?
The only reason, again, that we don't bring them all at once is to honor the committee time, or if there's follow-up questions that we haven't quite sorted out. Like something calls for us to do something different, mostly at the high school level, and we have to get our ducks in the row before we come and say, our ducks are in the row, we can soak up this policy. So it's a matter of, this is probably the worst month we could have done it because we have so many. But it's always in the works. So we're sending one round through, but always there's a whole another set. It's just not right now because we did so many that we're working on to get ready for the next round. If it was the way we had done it. So there's always work in progress before it's brought to the board, just so we can be clear about our path and get all of the people where they need to do and know what's coming up. Because we don't want to have a policy that says something and the next day the high school administration team says, what did you just do? We're always talking about things that, even if it's a rule that we have no choice in, we're always talking about how to make that work positively for our group. So there's always things going on behind the scenes, I guess, is the answer. It doesn't matter if it's a within the month or within the 2-month period.
So is 6 weeks manageable as opposed to the current 2 weeks?
Well, sure, it's longer. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine either way, honestly. Even if our challenge was so strong that we couldn't bring it the next month, we would have waited another month. We're not going to bring you something that we haven't solved how to procedurally deal with. That's just silly.
So the existing policy interpreted today would, to honor what you said, the general procedure would be that we would have it to you at committee before a board meeting for the first official reading. That's not to say that something couldn't have hit us between that 10-day period, and we might have to put, but it wouldn't be standard operating procedure. That, hey, we have to put this one in here because we just got word our league is changing grade point average, and that's an issue. And by the way, operationally, that's what we have to do now. I mean, from committee to agenda, we do our best to get everything on there, but it's not good use of your time either to not use that 10 days if there are agenda items that you need to see and deal with. So procedurally, Scott, does that address your concern?
Yeah,
If it was that committee, then there might be a rare instance, but we would certainly have notified you more than 24 hours in advance that that's being added to the agenda. And that would be rare, and that would be a first, and then the second would be the following board meeting, the following month's board meeting. So the current policy would work that. We just needed clarification on how to operate. Does that make sense?
I think it's clear.
Okay. And it wasn't me that took the extra time with Scott and said something we'd have been done 5 minutes ago with that.
The next thing on our list is a resolution for House Bill 512. And House Bill 512 has really come to the forefront rather quickly. I just want to tell you a little bit about what it is. So it would abolish the Ohio Department of Education by merging OD and with the Ohio Department of Higher Education and the Governor's Office Workforce Transformation. And so they would create a whole new agency called the Department of Learning and Achievement. And that's what's proposed. And so OSBA has asked for us to not support such a merger. And there are a couple of reasons why. One reason is that it would lessen the authority of the State Board of Education. I believe you would perhaps have fewer practitioners making really important decisions. For example, we often know, ideally on paper something sounds good, but if you were never a practitioner in a school setting, what that looks and sounds like on the ground level is a very different thing. There is a hearing tomorrow about 9:30, and future hearings have not been announced. But I imagine there will be many more hearings on this topic. It's a big, big idea. And Brandon, you're our policy board member. Is there anything more you would want to add to the whole concept of House Bill 512?
Absolutely. So this is kind of like a scary beast. So the Ohio Department of Education and the Ohio Higher Education encompass about $13.5 billion worth of funding. And there are currently 11 elected State Board of Education members and 8 non-elected appointed Board of Education members. So basically what House Bill 512 does is it's going to strip away all of the funding authority, all of the assessment authority, all of the state report card authority away from the Ohio Department of Education and put it into an appointed department. So you're going to have one person who's appointed by the governor who is going to take over $13.5 billion worth of our funding and is going to be able to make unilateral decisions on how our educators are assessed, how schools are assessed, how state report card is done, and how our schools are funded. So if we have issues with that now, oh my gosh, just wait until this thing takes effect. There's nothing good that could come out of this. This is so scary, in fact, that they're running this through the oversight an accountability committee instead of the education committee, because this thing would never, ever make it out of education. So they're trying to backdoor it out of committee for a House vote, and this thing could go straight DNR. Now, I know that as Board of Education members, we have no political affiliation, and we should have no political affiliation. But we do not want this thing to make it out of committee or make it through a House vote, because it could really have a big detrimental impact on not only public education, but I think private education as well.
So OSBA has asked for us to sign against such resolution. In your packet, you saw a sample one forwarded to you.
Now, again, the resolution that we have here is just the boilerplate resolution. I found about this on my own and then reached out to our current representative, Bridget Kelly, who kind of talked me through about the bill, and then I read up about it a little bit more. The bill itself is 2,430 pages long because it changes that many Ohio Revised Code statutes. There is a condensed analysis done by Carol Knapp, which is a lot easier to read, and then there's a financial assessment attached to this thing as well that outlines the significant impact funding-wise. So you could have one person who can say, nope, we're going to change how schools are funded, and it's going to be done this way, and that's it. And there's no recourse for that. And it's an appointed position, not an elected position.
I think to highlight this sense of urgency that Brandon suggested is that school superintendents were informed on Sunday. So that's how quickly House Bill 512 became.
But 2,400 pages didn't get written overnight.
No. Thought about it.
Well, to be fair, most of the 2,400 pages is a name change where they're striking out Ohio Department of Education or Ohio Higher Learning and changing it to the Department of Learning and Achievement.
It's probably been a work in progress longer than a couple of weeks, though.
I think so. So, I mean, if you want everything under one umbrella, it's the route to go. If you don't want everything under one umbrella, and that's not to suggest or note silos, people working in silos, because that's what's been suggested as a resolution to that. But I don't think those agencies work in silos. But just my opinion. So I would ask that you would support the resolution against.
100%.
The next thing on our list is board doc training.
Did you want to finish the rest of the
We
agenda
probably should go through the rest of the, I think we should, and then go through the board doc training. You were really off on our timing. We thought we were going to do board doc training at 6 o'clock.
Could I go ahead and bring them in?
And get us ready?
Yeah.
I think that would be fine. Okay, so we just have field trips, and the MOUs you see here, these are not unusual. These are actually folks applying for grants, and they need to show that they're working with North City schools. So, for example, the community connectors, that's just simply how we work with those grant agencies, and generally we're the financial distributor of those funds for number one. For employment, again, it's classified long-term sub at the high school because that person went on maternity leave. We have an addition to the classified sub list. Joe Walkwood, we're asking that you approve that as an employee stipend. He is a DJ. We also know that he is a faculty member. The group putting on the grade level, the juniors putting on the prom, want him to be the DJ. So for us to appropriately be able to pay him, it needs to be in the form of a stipend. And then, of course, the pupil activity contract, Steve Bosch for varsity baseball. And that includes personnel suggestions. You see our typical policy that we're going to have as a first reading this month.
Can we go, I hate to do this since we're running late already.
This is our first month for this, because we didn't put it on last month.
Can we talk about some mulches versus these?
Sure.
In the past couple of years, I think that, we don't have any reviews of coaches, but I think in the last couple of years, we've had some issues come up with speed. To my knowledge, and we don't, but I don't think you want to hear.
Okay, so would you want to say that?
Well, we'd want to definitely talk about that in
Executive
personnel committee
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
executive session.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anytime it involves specific performance.
So you see policy committee report, that would be our first reading. And then you see building and grounds. We have two different groups that have asked to use our space, Norwood Wrestling Youth and then Paycor. And then the finance committee report.
I'll be really brief. The forecast is trending very nicely. You'll do a May update, but everything is going well for us at the moment in terms of what we've been projecting. Hoping for some health insurance, good news there. I think Dr. Sabo, we have a meeting later this month to hopefully hear next year's health insurance rates. In my report this month, I gave you a cash reserve indicator that shows a healthy benchmark comparison through 2020. And we're reviewing the investment portfolio with the consultant that we use there. And just as a reminder, the bid opening is 3/8. That's this Thursday. We'll get information out to you just as quickly as we can. It may not be that evening with respect to bid results. It won't mean that it's a bid recommendation from the architect, but we can try to get numbers to you. So we're optimistic for some good bid results. And then finally, I added a page and an addendum that came out today to you on my treasurer's report that included 2017 per pupil expenditures. The takeaway is the same. It's been very consistent that our expenditures are higher than similar districts. At the same time, those costs are in the instructional and the direct student support, our administrative costs, and our building ops, which includes operations, which includes utilities, transportation, maintenance, custodians. Those two areas are under on a per pupil basis. And quite frankly, if you have this many buildings, you need more teachers. And so the bulk of the cost comes from operating smaller buildings. So that's my report. Thank you for your time earlier tonight with Gary as well. I appreciate the feedback on that.
So we have planned an opportunity for us to learn how to better use and have access to our board documents. So are you suggesting that our
During
board
the
president
training, yeah.
into our meetings?
So that we can do the training that wouldn't be of interest.
Right, or video.
That would be so true.
It's still a meeting because they're all here.
That's exactly right.
And so I think we're just we're in a meeting that will have no other discussion other than training to use the new software and technology for our board documents.
Okay.
And we are adjourned at.
No, we'll make that statement at the end of that training.
Oh, yeah. All
So-
right. Okay.
And I will leave the recorder on.
So our expectation is, or your expectation of us, the next time we have a board meeting, is that you'll come and you will find a Chromebook at your space. And that way we won't have to give you a paper copy, although we will for a little while give you a paper copy, but you'll find a Chromebook.
Okay.
And we don't want you to worry because we're going to guide you through this entire process this evening. And we have our expert trainer here with us. And I'm failing to remember your name right now.
Diana Freeman.
Diana. Diana's here with us all night long because she can't get a plane out. So
Well, it looks like now I'm driving to Indy.
Oh, good lucky for you. Evidently, all the weather on the East Coast has really impacted flights. So
Because I'm going to drive there, and then that flight will be canceled too, is my guess, because that's what I was headed to.
Probably.
To New York. Anyway, that's okay. You're going to New York or that?
I'm going to Alabama. I'm flying through
Through Atlanta?
And anytime there's a weather event,
That's what I was doing. Yes, yes.
I can already tell you I can't get out of this.
So we're going
We are, we're ready.
Okay, all right.
I was just saying, that's all that.
I don't know. Here's where I gotta worry about.
She seems a little.
Chromebook and getting your set, and I'll come in and come around and help you get logged in. Now, who is driving for me?
Terry's gonna drive.
You're gonna drive, okay, for me.
I'm still driving. I mean, you can drive.
Somebody has to.
I will if you don't want to, Terry. I had a troubleshoot out here. Okay.
I will come around and help you get logged in. As I mentioned, I'm Diana Freeman. I work for Board Docs, which is the company here that you're using. I'm actually a former school board member myself, so kind of been there, done that. I don't know that they give T-shirts, but sure they do with your school logo, right?
Badges of honor.
Yeah. So anyway, we will come and get you all set up and walk you through your meeting and what it's going to look like, to access your documents moving forward. So now I know they've already taken you to the Board Docs site, but I want to say something about that because you will be getting your packet, so you'll get a notification, and you may be at home, you may be at work. This is great for what you're going to do here, but when you're at home, you're going to need to log in from scratch. So I want to walk you through that first. So what you will do is go to boarddocs.com, 2 Ds, and from there, you'll see I don't think it's going to necessarily work because they've already found you. Ah, look, you're in. And so you'll go to log in the right corner, and then you'll get the black screen, which is where you work. That's where your folks had you. So your logins are all first initial, last
I
name.
gave him the card.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep, and the card. Just
So you go out of this?
No, you don't have to.
So,
Once you get there,
you
just
already
log in
have a
and it
piece of
takes
paper in front of you that tells you, and of course, obviously, that password is a temporary setup and you will change it yourself. Now, I'm going to say this because inevitably, I always have some folks in the crowd that are really fast and work right through. You're going to choose that top one. If you would please, even if you find where to change your password, please don't change your password before the training. We can change that at the end of the training. And part of that is because it requires a system update, and those happen randomly for that to take effect. So if one of you accidentally closed it down, we might not know how to get you back in. So we could, but it would take a few minutes. So if you would just wait to change your password. So some of you saw.
You're going to try
I did. See, I'm thinking.
getting ready to write it down.
I'm going to guess that there's a try one more time. Will you help her? And do your password all lowercase. And we'll just make sure.
I gotta ask you a question.
And then, do you need another letter printing? Okay. I don't like the big ones because
I told you had to hang by me.
it's fine.
So what you may have seen come up, and it depends on if you were all the way, somebody had already set your machine all the way up. You might have seen a secondary screen, and that was kind of what I wanted to point out to you, that gave you options, and it said go to My Board Docs instance, and underneath that was a little box that was checked, and I did not want you to uncheck the box because it's not remembering your username and password. What it's remembering is your specific website. So next time you don't have to go to boarddocs.com. When you start typing that, it will remember your specific website for Norwood. I can't spell my name.
You can keep talking. I'm not the other one.
Okay, so it looks like everybody is in. There we go. All right. And I'm going to, instead of standing behind you and talking over your back, I'm going to head back here to the screen and kind of walk you through
And I'm never sure if I should apologize up front, but if y'all haven't already picked it out, I'm not from here. So, you know, whether it's an apology or an explanation, I don't know. It's you'll hear lots of y'alls. I can't help it. I've said it too long. And yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes sir, no, sir. It's just, it's part of what we do. I can't
You'll
change
fit
it.
right in.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. So once you get to this screen, this is your Board Docs site specific. So this is what I was saying a while ago. So you have the boarddocs.com, and your specific URL is /OH/NWC. Anyway, I didn't want you to type all that in, so you can just access it by going to boarddocs.com and logging in from there, and then having it remember your site. So a couple of tips before we get started. When you're inside the site, you want to ignore that back button exists. That will take you completely out of Board Docs because you're working in a website. And I know most of our tendency, I always say all, but I can't speak for you, but my tendency, you know, I want to see what I just was seeing, and I hit that back button thinking it's going to take me back there. It's going to take you completely out. This was part of why I didn't want you to change your password yet. The other thing that catches people sometimes just a little bit is the little thing right there that looks like a house, the home button. That is not your home screen. That is your home website, which is your school district website. So if during a meeting, you know, again, as I mentioned, I used to be on the school board, and I know sometimes in conversation somebody would say, oh, I think that's on the website, or on the website it says, you know, and you've got a computer sitting in front of you, you want to go see, right? So my suggestion, if you want to open that during a meeting, if instead of clicking it, if you will right-click it, you'll get an option to open link in new tab, and then you can open it, you know, click there, and it will open up another tab, and she already had one open, but, and that way you can, sorry, my right click didn't work.
Does the
That's because
Chromebook
y'all have,
right
yeah.
The kiosk moves that could be.
So don't go to your website during the meeting. Don't hit the back
I
button.
hit the back
Yes,
button.
if you do go, you can. It's inside Board Docs. You don't want to hit the back button. Yeah. And if it happens during a meeting, and it's going to at some point, you know, you just come back in. You'll stay logged in, but you just come back into the site.
Scott's just gonna be in trouble.
So we'll kind of do a quick overview, and then we'll look at what an agenda is going to look like. So here's just background information. Of course, this is all editable locally. Now we kind of, you know, with the staff today, I think we've got to walk with one foot in both worlds. What the board's going to see, what that's going to look like, what the staff's going to see. But we actually have a third, and that is it's the public. I mean, it's a public site, and so what the public sees. And so you will see the different levels of security because, of course, as a board member, sometimes you have information, you know, that has particular student data or personnel data or whatever that's not available to the public. So I will walk you through what that's going to look like and where you're going to see this. But this is the primary welcome page for the board, and of course down there's a link if they need information to send an email. That I'm sure Terry's thrilled to have that sitting right there, so easy to access. So let's come back to the top. So this right now, the tab right here says featured because you have a meeting sitting out here featured. Featured is just an ease of access thing that plants that on your front page there. We'll come back to that in a minute. The next is your meetings. We don't want you. Actually, what I want you to do is log out. Are you logged in as you? We should be logged in as a board member. So log out right there and log in as one of your board members.
Okay, who wants me?
Brandon's it off. I heard you saying that. Yeah, and you can be logged in on more than one machine. So
I got it.
It's the same.
Bid opening is a meeting, right?
Yeah.
It's not a public meeting.
Because they were all started off the same.
I was asking who was
There
coming.
you go.
I knew.
Be sure to change your password.
Put it on Facebook.
Well, we will. Everybody will, but yeah. Okay.
And the reason.
So this makes a little more sense, because
You don't
obviously
know
she has
what it
editing
is.
rights. So it gives her a little more, so I want you to look like yours. So when we come to meetings, we click on that tab. This is where your meetings are going to reside. And this is both your archive and your future meetings. And that's part of the need for that featured designation, because all your meetings after they happen are going to live here. So right now, the featured doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, well, there's only one meeting. How could we mess that up, right? But later there'll be lots of meetings. We don't want you having to, dig through to find the right meeting. So that's why your upcoming meeting will always be featured on that front page. Like I said, right now there are no other meetings in here, but that's what that's going to look like eventually. Now your policies, right now we have set, just click, if you will, just the, and I don't know where we ended up with this, if it reset. So come here, do your drop down and we'll go look in draft.
Okay.
Let's see if they're there. Ah, they are. So I know. That was actually a big surprise. This afternoon, the email came through just a second ago. I started to run to your office and said, "Oh, y'all were." Let me tell you, I had people waiting 2.5 months, so I was not expecting.
We signed up
so,
2.5 months ago.
So there you go. And just in the nick of time.
Now,
your
how did you get the
policies-
bookmarks? Did everybody get the bookmarks? Oh, wow, Tim's got his too. How did you get the bookmarks there?
So you
Go up the policy.
they're still sitting in draft right now. Your policies are still sitting in draft. They've not been made active because all we did was import.
I went to active.
Yeah. So all we did was import your data. You all have to clean it up now. The formatting, as if you look at them and you start to break it down, you'll see, like the titles aren't correct and things like that. Because this particular service, it just pulls your data in, and then you have to go and add your specifics. So that's why they're actually not going to be pushed out where they're available to the public yet, because, they're not organized well and cleaned up. But the fact that the data is there, that was actually quite a nice surprise this afternoon when I saw that come through. But this is exactly how they're going to look. You can click on one of the sections and it will open it up. Now you see, here's where we start to see. So they all just came in unnumbered. So that's why they're not. Your staff needs to work on the organization and changing the numbers and everything. So that's why they're not going to be pushed out to the public yet, but the data's in there. So that's kind of a fun thing. All right.
Do you have to go through and each page?
That's ahead of the
I heard
policy committee
Randall
stuff.
wanted to.
It could be worse. You could be typing all that data in the Yeah.
We'll chunk it out.
So basically, she'll just kind of have to take a section at a time and work. Basically what she's going to do, she learned today, how to do the agendas, and it works the same. So she'll just basically come up here and read title, and of course the title over here, she'll move that up. So, it's a formatting thing. Yes, it's going to take a little while, but like I said, it's better than typing it in. And, and that is a service Board Docs will do. They'll get it all ready for prime time. That costs money. This service to import your data was free. So, yeah. So to me, that's a pretty good value. I'd much rather have that and just have to go clean up the formatting. So.
Go to meetings.
Yeah. So if you notice, every single area that we've opened, meetings, policies, etc., has a search, and that is one of the greatest things about Board Docs is the search. But the other search that is available, if you come up here and you notice the little magnifying glass, that's our universal search. So if you click on that one, that takes you to the search window. So you search everything at once. So as long as these things over here are checked, this is your local data. Now, there's not going to be anything searchable right now, partly because this all just, an hour ago got imported, and anything that's added has to do, in order to be available in the search, it does an overnight hard reset system update. So it will all be available tomorrow and search. That's available to the public, so that anybody, your taxpayers, your parents, your community members, members can all do the search. Do y'all need me to come? Are we okay, or do y'all need me to?
I'm sorry, no,
No,
we're
you're
good.
fine.
No, we're good.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if
No.
you needed some help over there, if I needed to run over there. Okay. So, like I said, this is available to the public. Now, the other thing that is available to you as what we call authenticated users, which are people that have a login, so it's board members and internal staff, is the meta search. So if you click on that, now you're no longer searching. Notice these are all unchecked. You're not searching your local data. Now you're searching the Board Docs database. This is just a research tool we make available to you. When I was on the board, like I said, things would our superintendent would come to us with some issues, and we would always go, okay, what are other schools doing about this? And that's this is where to find one of those answers. So is there some issue, question, whatever that y'all had recently that you would like to have a search? Okay, how about I suggest one? So recently, I was at a district and I said, yes, since Christmas, all our kids are bringing drones to school. So why don't we type in drones, D-R-O-N-E-S?
Oh.
Yep.
You want to know?
So Randall, is the policy the way it's in here searchable?
So you see that it's already
searchable, so you have to click the meta. And then basically it'll take off. This is going to search your local. This is going to search everything.
Yeah, so the meta search is where we are. That's where we're working. Yeah, if you click on the meta, now you're in our data. And scroll back. No, there you go. Okay, so if you search drones, you look up here and you see that there's 122 matches. It maxes out at 250. So it's sort of interesting to me that this particular topic across the United States doesn't have any more entries than 122. Maybe y'all's kids didn't show up with them after Christmas. What you see here are agenda items from, it's just doing a pretty simple computer search completely through our system. So you see agenda items. So why don't you go ahead and carry that one you were on?
So that's only for other school districts that are in your database.
And by other, you mean not you? Because your school will be under school districts.
No, other school districts. I mean, so it's pulling from only school districts that are in your database.
No, it's anybody that's in our database, and so you may see, well, the first one was a community college. Yeah, the very first one was a college. School districts, water districts, park districts, anybody that's in our database.
But they have to be on board docs.
Yes. Yeah, this is doing a Board Doc search. So it's searching our data, absolutely. So she clicked on one of the agenda items. So we see that this was on their consent calendar at their regular meeting, May 11th, 2015. And they were actually purchasing, they were appropriating money to purchase a drone, and here was the content down here. Now, all you see is the public content. So they may have had something in one of those different security fields. You're not going to see that. And the same will be true of your data. You'll be in the search soon, and other people can search yours, and all they'll see is the public content. So we'll close that. So that was an agenda item, and it tells you here it was Okaloosa County Schools in Florida. Now here next to it, we've got a policy. So if you click on that one, and that's Provo City Schools in Utah. And so here's their policy actually on drones. And because I know nothing about drones except doing this search, I'll show you something, so we'll close here. So let's go back up to the search. So they're also called UAVs. So after drones do OR, capital UAV. Okay. So notice our 122 now went to 159. So that's a good thing to remember. Like sometimes I ask if people and they'll say, yeah, lunchroom charges. What are people doing about lunchroom? Well, lunchroom or cafeteria. Yeah. So you can use that to expand. If you don't get a lot of answers, you can use that to expand your search to look for something else. So let's back that back out, the UAV. The other way that you can limit it is do capital OH. Do space. I know. Yeah, I know. Y'all clearly just don't. You're not in the right mindset because Today's the only place I've ever been in this state, and nobody chimed in after I said, oh, wait. So here you go. Yeah, y'all disappointed me deeply because I usually hear that.
I said we have UC
We're one place. Yeah, they said that's what they said. Everybody, they're like, no, you're in the wrong part of the state. So you notice now there's 7 matches, but they're all Ohio schools. So that's a way to limit it. So we don't care what everyone in the United States is doing. We care about what other Ohio school districts are doing. So especially if it's something specific, to your law, how are people, carrying out something that your legislature
How many
passed?
school districts in Ohio is on board docs?
I can find that out. Off the top of my head, I have no idea. We have overall, back in the fall, we surpassed 2,500 entities. Now, how many of those are schools and how many are in Ohio, I don't know. And like I said, that was back in the fall. I'm guessing we're around 3,000. The vast majority are still schools. The software was developed for schools about 20 years ago, specifically for schools. In the intervening time, lots of folks have come on board and wanted to use it because it basically fits any governance model. And so we do, like I said, have city councils and county commissioners, and I have done one water board, one water group. I hesitate to say water board. Park boards, any kind of public board, they can use this. So, yeah. So anyway, this is just, like I said, a research tool out there and available so that y'all can kind of see other things that are going on. When you are ready to search your local data, again, you would move it back to these boxes. But when we're ready completely, we'll just click that arrow right there and move it off.
Is it possible to do a meta search but only for policies?
You would have to do your search and say policy, like drone policy, and then it would go through. And even then, it's not going to be perfect because if the agenda item was to adopt a policy, it's still going to show up. So basically, you can't separate out the two.
All right.
I mean, it really is a pretty simple.
Okay.
To Brandon's question, you can get us a list of Ohio schools, an actual list.
I could, but I don't know.
I would think you can.
I mean, I know that they exist, whether...
We're going to count, because what I could see would be useful, like tonight, if Dr. Sabo wanted to do a search on security, not just in Ohio, but she may want to refine that search down to certain counties. It's going to help us to kind of know the schools that are in the area that might be on board docs. Like I pulled up one here, Princeton's on there. Okay, well that might be a policy as of more interest to us than say Ashtabula County.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be a tool we could use.
I would suggest, how they would contact that email to send a question to support. That would be my guess. I don't mind asking.
Okay.
I just, I'm on the training side and not the sales side. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I mean, if we're kind of like on the leading edge of this, where there's not many schools in the state that are doing this, this may be something that we want to do.
Well, did y'all?
No, I think there's a lot of schools you can
There are quite a few. I can't tell you. Honestly, I don't even know how many school districts y'all have total in Ohio.
You've got Shaker Heights, Princeton, Swanton Local,
West Claremont School.
Orange County.
Toledo,
in our region.
Toledo, Worcester,
School districts. Well, if you pull up Ohio schools on Word Docs in the meta, it brings up. There you go.
Painesville. Yeah, there's a lot of schools.
There you go. Once you signed out.
That's right.
See, she's paying attention.
So, friends, a couple things you want to be aware of. What you're going to find out is the range of how people use their board docs, is wide. So there are going to be some schools, they have it, but they may not be your go-to as an example. And then you're going to find some that you're going to know. Let me just go because I know when I do training, I have 2 or 3 go-to. When we run into a problem, it's like I have 2 or 3 districts that I pull up because I know how they do their data. And some of that, and I don't mean to be critical of our other subscribers, some of it is how recently somebody was trained. Because Board Docs has been around 20 years, and so you have some accounts that they don't even use some of the newer features. because somebody got trained, 15 years ago, and then they trained another secretary who trained another, and so maybe they don't read the email. We always, if we add features, we send out emails, but not everybody reads them and utilizes them. So, yeah. So the levels there kind of, they'll vary. But you'll find your go-to people pretty quickly. Anyway, like I say, just a research tool. It's just out there if you care to use it. The thing next to that is a little, kind of looks like a person icon, and you notice there's a drop down by it. So we'll do the drop down, and we're just going to walk through this starting at the bottom. So the very bottom one is Board Docs Help. So that is your online user guide. We do not give you, yes ma'am? How do I get out of there? Okay, hang on, coming.
That little white arrow.
So there should be. Yes?
Oh, okay. All right, I see it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just slide it off. Okay. So we don't give you a printed manual for a couple of reasons. One being we're an online company and we're going paperless. The other is we, as I mentioned, we update based on customer request. We add features and things like that. And so every time we updated, we would have to send you out an addendum that you would not file and not have access to, right? Same. So yeah, everything's available here online. The nice thing about it is it's searchable. So it's kind of like an online table of contents. So it's actually built in a Board Docs. It's going to start to look pretty familiar to you. So the darker strips are categories. In other words, they don't have any data in them. If you click them, what they will do is just collapse. Yep. You're doing good at being vain, like you. And then the items are underneath there. So you click on an item, and the information comes up on the right. So you navigate on the left, read on the right. So whatever you click on, the information related to it and images and everything will come up over here. So you can go item by item using these navigational arrows. Will just take you, if you wanted to read an entire section or whatever. Now you notice there is a printer icon, so you can print if you would like to, like the computers you're using right now are not hooked up to a printer, but if you were at home or something, there was a section you wanted to print, you could use that. The thing next to that kind of looks like the little cartoon talk box. And if you click that, that is one way to contact support. That's what I was referring to a while ago. So if you have a question for our support team, you could.
Sorry, I'm going to help.
No, you're fine. I can.
The little person there.
Yeah. So your drop down, by the little person, and the very bottom one is the help. Yeah. So this is where you could send a message to our support staff. This would generate an email, and so they would reply to you most likely by email. They would call you if it was a fairly complicated. I tell people, like, if you have a suggestion, something you'd like to see us do, the best way to do that is make a suggestion to our support team, because they really do log, people that are looking for a certain, enhancement or whatever, and then we make those changes based on that. That's kind of what I use this for. So we will cancel out. If you really need immediate help, if you're trying to look through something and it's not doing what you want to or not acting the way you want to, come all the way to the top. Let's scroll all the way to the top. The very first item, that About Board Docs, there is our 800 number, 800-407-0141, and it's extension 1. That's the very first item there. 24/7 tech support. And that's real life people. And it's not only real life people, it's real life Board Docs employees, it's real life Board Docs programmers. So, in fact, we called earlier when your policy first came in, and we were like, wait a minute, we're not seeing it. So we called, jumped on, and he was able to make some changes so we could just see it immediately. So, like I say, that's our programmers. They'll look. We'll ask you what district and what user so that they can look on the other side. So you may be right-clicking and it requires a regular click and they can see what's going on. Or it may be, an issue, a glitch, whatever, and they can resolve that too. It is software, it does happen. So anyway, that's our 800 number. They are awesome to work with. And like I say, some Saturday morning, 2 a.m. when you can't sleep and you're reading through those board agendas, You run into a problem, somebody's there. If you happen to get the voicemail, leave a message because I guarantee someone will return your call within an hour. So always leave a message if you happen to get that. Okay, so one thing this is actually a good time to kind of point this out. During your meeting, all of your attachments now are going to open within Board Docs. You're not going to have like a separate document. Everything is attached to the item that it goes to. So you're going to have different windows that open up. You see right now we've got quite a number of tabs. So she could close this if she wanted to, but it doesn't matter. The reason I'm telling you this is the number one way that people accidentally shut it down during a meeting. They're like, oh, okay, I'm finished, and they go over there and click that red X and it shuts the whole thing down. So my suggestion is when you have all these little tabs open, especially during a meeting, don't worry about it. My goal for you is meeting continuity. So you see the tab and it has the little tree. That's our logo. Always look for the tree and just click on it. Don't worry about all those tabs sitting out there. We're going to come back to the drop down by your little person icon. The next one is log out, which is self-explanatory, right? However, I do want to point out the system will not just time you out. So if you click that red X and did not log out and shut down and walk away, the next person on that computer could open it up and you would still be logged in. Board members, this is why I really spend a couple of minutes with y'all to point this out, because most of these folks are going to be using it in their offices, pretty protected. You may open it at home, at work. When you get that email, I'm sure you're just dying to get right into that agenda. Your agenda's ready and you want to open it wherever you are, right? So if you're at home and you're on a shared computer, your kiddos use it, your grandkids, your spouse, whatever it happens to be, you want to be sure, because this is going to have confidential information, just like you get in your board packet. You want to be sure you log out when you're finished. So that needs to just be a habit. It needs to be a habit at the end of meetings if you'll all just kind of help remind each other. The next one is where you're going to change your password, but not now. So we'll click on it to see what that's going to look like. Your old password, of course, everyone's the same, and you entered it a moment ago. Your new password has to be at least 8 characters, has to include a lower and uppercase, and at least one number and a special character. Then you'll repeat it, and it will allow you to change it. For now, we're just going to cancel.
Yeah, I'm not doing that yet.
Okay, we'll come back to our drop down by our little person. And the last thing is where you can update your contact information. So if something were to change about your information and you wanted to change it, you can change it yourself here in the update contact information. Okay, so that's where all that is. Now we're ready to break down backward. Question? We still good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to now look at our meeting agenda. So we click on the agenda. We created just a training agenda. It's not a full agenda. We created the framework and then added a few items. So let's click on View the Agenda. And there it is. So we had to make a couple of tweaks. I referred to it a moment ago. Because Board Docs categories, and this is just a programming thing, are holders. They don't actually contain data. So all of your items, all these things needed to be an individual item. So we had to create a category to put them in. So we have one called opening items, which parallels Robert's Rules of Order. So, it's small change, but not anything huge, but just wanted you to know what that's going to look like. I don't know how our B got moved up there. Look at your item B. Your 1B. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we'll start with call to order is 1A. And every item that you see is going to have item details. We're still learning. We're going to see a couple of little tweaks we need to make. This tells you the meeting you're in. This is the Board Docs training meeting. Your opening items is the category. The subject is call to order. Access is public. Your items will always be public. You are a public entity. We do have a handful of private boards, corporate boards, and they can make their items private. Y'all cannot. So you will always have your items marked as public, and the type on this one is procedural because it's just something you do at the beginning of a meeting. You don't vote on it or anything. But while we have it open, let's look at these content fields. You see that there are 3 areas: public content, administrative content, and executive content. So executive content is exactly like it sounds: executive session, closed session items. So that's where you would put content that would, that is legally protected by law, and you're allowed to, have it apart from the public. And so that's where information, no one sees that particular field except the people, and not even all the people in this room. You right here, your superintendent, your treasurer, I'm sure. So that's who sees that executive content field. That's the only folks that do. In fact, I can't see it. If I had my computer in here, that wouldn't even show to me. Your administrative content is information, and you read everything. You do what we call read up. So board sees it all. So you see your executive, you see administrative, and you see public. Administrative is not necessarily, protected by law. Somebody could ask for it if they wanted, but it is kind of that mid-level. It's something that maybe we don't want to push to the public. Good example, overnight field trips. Your kiddos are going to stay overnight. They're going to, we looked it up earlier.
The Wilds.
The Wilds.
The Wilds.
The Wilds. That's a place? Okay, well, it sounds fun.
Sorry, in Ohio.
Okay, so they're going to stay overnight there at the Holiday Inn. I don't know what this is, but lots of folks go to Disney and participate in their band festivals. Our kids do where I live, and they stay overnight at XYZ Hotel. You don't necessarily need that out there for the public. I mean, certain people need to know, but you don't just need everybody knowing where to access your children. So it's kind of a protection. That's the kind of thing that might be, in administrative content. Not highly confidential, but just not something we're going to push. And then public content, and this is where almost all of your information, you're a public entity, most of your information is out there, and that's where almost all your data is going to go, is in the public content. So we're going to skip item B because I don't know how it ended up there. We were playing around earlier. Obviously, we did something. So here's item C. Again, just roll call. Next one is Pledge of Allegiance, and you see we put your little flag in there for the Pledge of Allegiance. We really did this just an example to see what you could do with Board Docs. You can import pictures. So, like if you're, reporting back on students that won awards or won contests or whatever, and somebody has photos, you can actually upload the photos so board members can see those, right in the field. Next is the adoption of agenda. Now notice this one looks a little different, because this is actually our first action item. So we've got our meeting, our category subject, access is public. The type is action because you vote on it. So the recommended action is right there. So we put in your recommended motion. You obviously can, you're not tied to this. Anybody can amend that. But the recommended is motion to adopt agenda. And then, down here is where they will, take your housekeeping. Next is approval of minutes. It's going to work exactly the same way. The one thing I do want to point out about approval of minutes is moving forward, your minutes will actually be linked right here, because we have what we call a minutes editor, so that then on that dashboard, you'll see the minutes right next to the agenda. So they're linked together. So that's why you'll put your minutes in the minutes editor, and it will attach them right here. Now, we're going to jump back up to now our 1B that shouldn't be a 1B. So this is, for example, a field trip. So again, you see in public content, this should all look familiar to you. It came off of an old meeting. So it is information you've already voted on. So these are, the kinds of things that you can do. This is information that's out there to the public. You must scan that for me. And then down here, for example, your Norwood Middle School Orchestra has been invited to participate in the Trills and Thrills Music Festival. And you go, what exactly is that? And so we built a link there, and you can just click that link, and it takes you to the festival that your kiddos are participating in. So if you want to know more about that. So, like I say, it's kind of nice because it is the online, yeah, we're not gonna close, we're just gonna click on our tree. There you go, I'm gonna stay in there. So the nice thing about it, like I said, you can build in photos, you can build in links. You know, it's just, I hear board members say a lot of times, you know, they feel like they understand a lot more about the school because it does have this kind of different dimension to it. And so lets you, you know, kind of be a little more up close and personal. Yeah, and now here's a perfect example. So in administrative content, this is the example I was giving you a while ago. So there's your link right there. So you open it up, and I think your folks actually, they were saying that they're going to create kind of an online form, so it would be in there, but this is what's been done in the past. And so, oh look, Hamilton High School, I live in Hamilton. So right here, you know, you can see your information, and you understand how we put this in administrative. It's got specific student names, student data, that of course we wouldn't, you know, necessarily have out there to the public. So. I don't know if we have any information. Student Rising Stars. I think we have just a little bit, you know, basically how you're going to see your new policies, revisions of policies. Again, your policy document, you're losing me. It's down here. So, and of course, it's attached, but in public. So you click on it, you open the attachment right in the field. And it's right there, and that one is in the public field because, of course, public sees, you know, policies that are being considered. Employment, I think, had information in it, and so here's a good example. You see quite a lengthy amount of information in your employment field. These fields will actually hold like 12 pages of data. I don't know that they would ever actually put that. You know, if something was that lengthy, they'd probably put it as an attachment. But you can, you know, scroll. So you'll get all your information and data right there. You can have, an item can have as many attachments as you need. So I always tell people, you know, if there's something that you're attaching that's particularly lengthy, you know, they can break it down to different sections. It is all ADA compliant, because they'll type in, you know, like what the attachment is, so that if somebody's at home using a reader, they can read it. So ours has all been approved through the Office of Disabilities. I can't think of the exact name of it right this second. But anyway, it is ADA compliant. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what your agendas are going to look like. Like I said, a lot of these are just kind of placeholders, you know, because we built out the structure for your meetings. Let's come back out, click on meetings, so just come back out to the front. So you see that it is printable, so you could print the agenda. This is what the simple is going to look like, which is basically just your categories and your items. And then the other one is detailed agenda. Friends, I want to point out one more time, everything in Board Docs is tied to your role. So if you print this and you are a member of the executive, then it's going to show all of that. So if you printed it, you'd be cautious with it. I read a statement. We'll close this. It has a, it doesn't really have official minutes in there, but this is where they would reside. If you want to just click that, yeah. So the minutes are there right now. That's just kind of the structure, but that's where your minutes would be parked. We'll close. As I was mentioning earlier, that way that puts them right there with the meeting agenda so that people can look at minutes, refer back over to agenda if they want to see more detail or whatever. You notice that we have a share button here. So this is how, when your agenda is completely put together, she'll click that share button and it'll open an email option, and she'll email you the link. What you're going to get in your email is the link that says, you know, your Board Docs is ready, click here. And you'll have to click and log in and everything, but it'll take you right to that meeting. If they had to change an item and it had already been made active, like I know in the summer, personnel might, you know, change. You might get that perfect teacher kind of, you know, late in the game after you've already gotten your agenda. They can update the agenda and then actually click view agenda. They could send you a link to just that item and say this item has been updated, so they could send a link from here. So that's it in a nutshell. What questions can I answer?
So I'm thinking if if I were new to this, I would perhaps go directly to the print report and just look at it like that. Perhaps the evening of the event of the board meeting, but before that, I could really dive in deep. What's been your experience for people as their very first board meeting using this?
Most people, we have done training and built the meeting for that night, and and used a meeting. You will find, I mean, it's new. It's a new format and kind of something we're working with. However, it's pretty user friendly. So most people just, to quote the phrase, rip the Band-Aid off. The sooner that you jump in, if you push it back and it's going to be harder. The quicker you jump in, you're just going to be able to move forward with it. And like I said, it's pretty simple. You just open your agenda, go to that first item, and then I would suggest that you use your navigational arrows, and so that just takes you. You're not on call forward. And then that just takes you item to item to item. And so, all your information is right there. And we've structured it where it really should look familiar. We structured it pretty much, like what you've had. It just is now electronic. But certainly the print function is available. But I would dive right in and I know that you all take your packets and study them in advance, right? Really, the first meeting or two, you really want to be attentive to that. And make sure that in advance you've opened those attachments and read over your material so that your meeting, like I say, our goal is meeting continuity, that you just continue on and that the flow happens, And that's what most people say. First month, everybody's a little shaky. Second month, it's okay. Third month, you don't know what you did before. So it will be a pretty smooth transition, I think, into it.
So you mentioned depending on the role on the board, your view looks different?
All your board members, the view is the same.
Okay.
It is your internal staff.
Okay.
Do not have access to executive content.
Okay. I was curious about if our board president's view looked different. So, okay.
No. And some people, you can actually use that executive content area. It doesn't just have to be content. Lots of folks use that to give instruction to their board. So it may say down there, president will ask if there is, and they'll put that in executive, things that they would have given you, kind of I know when I was on the board, we had a little cheat sheet so we could, follow along, and lots of folks will just go ahead and put that information down in executive, and then you can you can make text different colors, you can highlight it, so a lot of times they'll make that a different color and highlight it, so the board knows this isn't true content, this is meeting process information that will help, move along the meeting. So there's all kinds of things that you can, utilize within the system. And you got to give your internal folks a little bit of a break. Like I said, we had one little bump in the road tonight. I'm not sure when we did that, but somewhere during training, because we were practicing moving things and I'm showing them, because it does reorder. That's the nice thing. So like if they get an item, in fact, today they had sort of a late edition and they were going to go have to reprint everything. No more reprinting. It's all, electronic, so you can add an item, it renumbers, it resorts, everything's there, and ready to go. So, yeah, really, friends, there's two big reasons for board docs. Transparency. Your community can log on, they can see the agenda, they don't have to come up here and ask, so it really makes it much nicer. There'll be a link, they can just go to your website and they're going to look, and of course what they're going to see is the public documentation, which is almost everything, but so as far as transparency, it's a lot nicer, a lot more accessible to your community. The other thing is efficiency. Now, I know your staff doesn't think that today because, we spent a long time training today and, building this framework. Yeah, they're rolling their eyes, I know. But moving forward, it will become more automatic for them and you're not printing reams of paper. Your community will become quite adept at this. They were asking, well, do we still print? And you can still print a few for the community, but I will send you a press release so you can, build a link, put information out there. And you'll be amazed at how quickly people will just anticipate, because it's a website. It's readily available from any device. So, your phone, your tablet, your Kindle, your anything. If it gets on the web, you can go to Board Docs. Yep. So very, really, really easy in that sense, and that's where your efficiency really comes in. So, questions? What can I explain further, clarify, except the number of Ohio schools off the top of my head? That one we've learned, I clearly do not know the answer to.
So can you speak a little bit to the security of the site?
As I mentioned, it's been around for about 20 years. Never been breached. You're actually, and now I'm gonna, your IT person in the room is probably gonna chuckle here in just a minute, because I know just enough to be dangerous, but I did go to one of the security sessions just because I wanted to understand. So our CEO, he's the one that actually developed it, and he is still the primary architect of the system. And so I went to one of his sessions where he was explaining the security. You're not actually you're not in our servers. Like, you're not going directly to our servers. He has mirrored sites, and I think it bounces back and forth 4 times before you actually see it. So there's security after security after security. He always says we have the same security as agencies that have 3 letters in their name. CIA, FBI, all of that. We like I said, never been, even when Google Docs was Board Docs never has been. The only time that information has been out there that wasn't supposed to is when someone put it in the wrong place. So, it is as secure as the users. And we spend a lot of time today talking about, different areas and different levels of security.
Oh my God.
Well, you'll have 2 or 3 eyes on it. I mean, it will never be just one person. And if there's a question, you'll always put it in one of those secure areas. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, you'll log out of your systems. You will not share your password, things like that. Because you do want to keep it secure. But yes, we have never in Board Docs' existence had an issue.
But if they have password trouble, they can reach out to the site itself and say, I forgot my password, or reach out to
Your
our
internal folks can reset it, can reset your password. Yeah. That part they can. Now, the 800 number, and they can help you in a pinch. They try not to do things like reset, because that's really more of a local decision. Yeah. But our 800 number, folks can help you get through anything else.
Yeah. Mr. Strauss, you're clear on how to keep account of motions and...
We're going to do that manually for a little bit.
Okay.
And then we'll move into the automated.
Well, the way that we developed it, I think you'll still be able to print off, so you'll have your form. We did that specifically for that reason.
Okay.
We entered your kind of information, who makes the motion, 2 seconds, and then your little chart into each item that was an action item, so that you could print it off, and then you'll have that to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then the young woman that's out here today, Heather. I nearly said Heather. And then when she loads the minutes, and of course she can, kind of use the format that will pull through, or, her format that she's been using. Either way, you'll load those minutes into the minutes editor, because it's a text box, so you could do cut and paste if you wanted to.
So our goal is next Thursday to have this ready for you, which means this Friday.
So they'll be able to log on at home from their own PCs. They'll have these at board meetings for familiarity.
Mm-hmm. And the hard copy, just for a little while.
And the hard copy for a while. Are we still going to be emailing traditionally for a while, or are we going to go straight to this for Friday?
We're going to go straight to it.
Okay.
Well, on the email, unless you had her do double work and create one in some other form, there really won't be a hard copy that you can email. It is just the link. And if you feel more comfortable, true. I guess you could, see, the exhibits wouldn't be. So, you could, I guess, add through and scan it all in. But
I'm only asking. I'm just asking so the board's aware on Friday.
Information. And if you're
going to get a link.
Comfortable.
And
you have printers at home. Click that print button, and
But we don't want them to have to do that.
Sure.
Right.
If we go straight to this on the emails, are we going to be able to get access to our phones on those?
Is there an app for it?
Is there an app?
There's no app.
Okay.
You
so-
go to the
You just use
website. Yes,
Safari.
it is accessible by phone.
Just
So
use
if yours an iPhone, it'll be Safari. You know,
Right.
whatever your browser is on your phone, you just go to boarddocs.com exactly like you did here, and then link.
We'll forward
Yeah,
that
from
link.
there.
We'll forward that link to you. That will take you straight to the login in case you do it from your phone.
Yeah.
I just sent
I mean,
that
it'll be
to you.
small, but yes, it'll absolutely be there. And part of the reason that we don't have an app is that security. You know, you don't, our information doesn't come to you, doesn't get pushed. The link will, but we're not pushing, you know, because you think about it, that's where breaches happen.
Right.
Is when something, you come to the site, then we can keep the site secure.
Okay, so we'll just be able to.
Yeah, you can link through anything.
So when we make changes internally to our agenda, are we gonna keep it all on the agenda, just highlight it and send out it? Okay. But I like the way we do
This
it now.
was,
so
this was
everything's
so
there.
apparent to
That's
me months back when, you know, we were working on the district calendar and we put it as an exhibit, but it was not in the large stack of items. So I was passing around my one copy, and there's just such a better way to share the work.
Yeah.
Because you know, I kept thinking how that appeared on camera was that I had shared the work with you, and that is certainly not the intent. The intent is to be transparent to, of course, all of our constituents, but to make the work readily available for your review.
No, I mean, it's clearly, and thanks for bringing it to our attention, because it's a lot of paper to manage, and now that I'm sure Brandon would even say that you're on this side of it and you see all of the attachments and everything, it's not just a 5-page agenda. It's a lot to manage.
Oh, yeah.
There's cost to managing it, and it's very robust, and the cost is relatively inexpensive. It's slightly over a couple $100 a month to pay for this on an annual basis, and gains access to for your public, and I think will make us more efficient in here with what we have to print and everything. So thanks for letting us try it and being willing partners in that process too.
And what you're going to learn over time, you're going to love that search feature. Like I say, I'm not on a school board anymore. Well, I'm not even talking about just the meta search, but just your local search. But I am on a couple of other boards, and we are still, you know, forever. You know, who did we place on this committee? Who had that bid? You know, you'll just be able to go in and find it. And the search feature is worth its weight in gold to me. You know, on any boards or anything that I'm on, because you can just go in and look it up. You know, I was visiting somebody the other day. They had a contract, somebody had repaired, you know, I think it was a roof. Were having issues with it. Well, they couldn't remember exactly. So we went into their board docs, pulled it up, and were able to, this is the number, you know, here's the information, it's right here. And we're able to find that person readily, you know, and had all the data, the backup where the person gave them a warranty and everything, so they had it all attached. And I may have mentioned this if you haven't figured it out from the accent that I live in Texas. And, you know, we had a little storm last fall. And nearly 300 entities along the Gulf Coast flooded, lost all their data, cities, counties, school districts, you know, all kinds of entities don't have those records anymore. They've just lost all those, you know, those scads of file cabinets, you know. And so the folks that had theirs electronically did not lose their data. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're moving that direction. It's all a change, but we're moving that direction, and it is certainly more secure. Yeah. Anything else I can clarify? Or thank you so much for your time and your trust in Board Docs, and thank you for your service. I've been there. I understand. You know, everybody stops you to say what a great job y'all are doing. Yeah, I've been there. Been there, done that.
So we can't forget to change our password?
Yes. Yeah, now you can change your passwords. Now you can change your passwords. And you also want to, at the end of the meeting, log out. And you want to, in fact, you can put that in that executive, you know, on your adjournment, log out.
And on the Chromebooks, you just click exit session and sign out now. So that's all you have to do. Click exit session, the red box in the lower right-hand side.
I'm changing my password.
Okay, and then sign out now.
Where was that, Christina?
Lower right-hand side should say exit session. Oh, you first got to go to your
We're
real
gonna have to
person
update
and
this
click
every
log
6
out.
months or through 60 days.
Oh, you're already
Oh,
there?
on that one, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's
6 months.
180, yeah, 180 is what it is.
Refresh for a minute.
Just making sure before I put it in here and have to forget.
Yep. Got it.
You know, the name of your first pet and the number 1, and then the number 2, and then the number.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Now I will go about trying to find my way.
I know,
Where
see
am I
that?
going next?
Or you have to officially close out the meeting?
Yeah. Sorry, not mine.
You keeping these in here?
We're gonna lock them.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get some more cards. Jerry, when
Waiting
you're
on me, aren't you?
Jerry, when you're ready, you could adjourn the meeting.
We are adjourned at 7:47.